All right, so the last couple of times that we've been together, we've been talking about this habit of comparing ourselves to others. I think by and large we know we shouldn't do that. That sometimes it leads us to think more highly of ourselves, and that sometimes it leads us to feel inferior or even sometimes insecure. And the bottom line is, as we've said, there's no win in comparison, okay? So let's just say that, because I think if there's anything that I'd like you to get drilled in, so can we say that together? There's no win in comparison, all right? All right, so, listen, all these are real, right? I see your car, I see your lawn, I see your clothes. I even see what you scored at the thrift shop, whatever it is that I'm comparing you to, or you're comparing yourself to me, there's no win. Absolutely no win, no advantage, no finish line, no peace. And the reason that there's no win in comparison is because there's always somebody with a bigger thank you, yes, all right. She's skinnier. He's richer. Somehow they're nicer. Their kids are better, okay? And then if you're a real hard charger, there's always somebody wants to be an est, right? They have to be the smartest, the skinniest, the fittest. And maybe for a while you are. But then you know what? Old Mother Time catches up with us, right? We get older, and no longer are you the est of anything. So, today Maddie read, Gina said, so you're going to know this parable, okay? All right, so a parable, first thing, important thing, it's a made-up story, okay? This never happened, okay? And parables, we understand, are made for one single point. Now, you can disagree on what you think that point is, and I think, Gina kind of traversed over two different ones with possibility, but a parable has one point. That's the whole idea of a parable. So if we had time, we would see that on this particular day, Matthew 25, like the entire chapter is parables, back to back to back to back. Now, sometimes after a parable, Jesus would say, hey, let me tell you what that parable means. Sometimes he finished the parable and he just walked off and everyone's left going, huh? And sometimes he would say, hey guys, people, women there too, do you have any idea what I just said? And they say, no, none. And he would say, okay, well, let me explain this parable. Well, this time this is one of those parables where Jesus just finishes the parable, just charges on right to the next parable. So parables were our way of helping us understand the way God views the world and the way God views you and me, okay? So because of that, parables are wonderfully insightful if we can parse through and come to what Jesus was, the core, the nugget of what Jesus was trying to get us to understand. Now, this parable has a surprise ending. And because of the surprise ending, it's really important to remember this is a story. It's made up to make a point. And the point I'm looking at it as, and understanding it to have, is to help us get off this wheel, this hamster wheel, this treadmill of comparison. So, as parables go, I think this is one of the better known ones. It's, as mentioned, it's called the parable of the talents. Again, Gina did a nice job there. A talent was ultimately just, at this time, just a unit of measurement of some kind of money. Could be gold, could be silver, could be, but it wasn't like necessarily anything other than a measure of money. So in Matthew 25:14, Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is like a man going on a journey who called his servants. Now the key word, he entrusted his wealth to them. He didn't give them his wealth. This master, the wealthy man, said, I'm going to be gone for a long time, and while I'm gone, I want you to manage different amounts of my wealth, and I expect you to do with my wealth what I would do with my wealth. And so we see in verse 15 then, in one to one he gives 5 bags. Could be gold, could be silver. Again, it's that's not the key point of the story, all right? And then to the second one, he gives 2 talents. Then the third one, he gives 1 talent. Okay, now here's another of those key phrases. To each according to his ability. All right? So, like any boss, any manager, any department head, leader of an organization, he looks at the different, his different servants, and he looks at them and he thought, hey, you've got a lot going for you. So I'm going to give you 5 bags of whatever, 5 bags of money, 5 bags of talent for you to manage. So the next, he assessed this person. He says, you're good too. In your own right, I'm going to give you 2 bags. Now the third one, he kind of sized him up and down and said, okay, you get 1. All right. Now remember, made up story. All right. So the manager is looking at these people. They work for him. He knew they didn't all have the same skill set. So according to their skill set, he gives them responsibility. Now, a professor that I had when I took a class on parables always said, remember 2 things. In a parable, you can always ask, where's God in the story? And where am I in the story? Okay? So for the sake of our time together, I'm going to say you're a 2-bagger. Okay? Now, I know some of you probably think you're a 5-bagger, but you're not that good. And take heart, you're also not a 1-bagger, okay? You're better than that. But that's kind of like life, right? There's going to be people who have more than us, and there's people who are going to have less than us. And so Jesus continues. So the rich guy goes on a journey. Now the guy who had 5 bags of gold, we're going to say, went out once and put it to work, and over time he doubled it. Worker B number 2 goes out, does the same thing over time. Again, remember, it's over a long period of time. That's the inference in the Greek. He too doubled his master's money. So 5 went to 10, 2 went to 4. Worker number 3 received 1 bag, goes off, digs a hole, puts it in the ground, hides his master's money. All right. So now when Jesus said that, I believe his audience went, uh-oh, that's bad, You already get this sense, right? It ain't going to end well. It's kind of a teaser that's going to come. We don't even need to finish the parable. When the owner comes back, it's just not going to go well for that guy. But Jesus continues. So this guy takes his 1 bag of money, and he's thinking, well, I don't know. We don't know what he's thinking, but it's a made-up story, so we can kind of guess. He's like, okay, what am I going to do with my 1 bag of money? Give me 5 bags? Yeah, I would do something with it. Give me 2 bags? Yeah, I would do something. Maybe he's feeling a little shafted. Maybe he's feeling a little short. But I only got 1 bag of money. What's the master thinking? So after a long period of time, that's an important phrase in there, after a long period of time. The reason that's important because after a long period of time in the Greek means basically it's a lifetime, okay? So after a long time, it kind of gives the impression that it's the twilight of this life. You've lived your whole life. The owner returns and it's time to settle up. He's going to ask them, hey, what did you do? What did you do with what you had? Verse 20. So the 5-bagger brings that 5 and another 5, and I can, it's fun to put yourself in the story. He's like, oh man, I can't wait for the master to get back. He is going to really think I just really knocked it out. Is he back yet? Hey, I've heard he's coming. Is he back yet? And so the ensuing conversation goes something like this. You entrusted me with this. He knew he didn't give it to him. He said, you entrusted me with this. You didn't loan it to me. I received your 5, and I gained 5 more. And in verse 21, then his master replies, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in a few things. And at this point, everyone listening, just as we're listening today, goes, yeah, heck yes, Jesus. He was faithful. He did a good job. So the manager, the boss, the good entrepreneur says, you were faithful with a little bit of responsibility. I'm going to give you even more responsibility. So, story goes on. Parable continues. The man who had 2 bags comes to the master. He was all jacked. He was excited. Essentially, it's the same thing. You entrusted this to me. Again, it's that word is used. You entrusted this to me, and I've gained 2 more. And the master again replies, yep, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in a few things. I'm going to put you in charge of many more things. Come and share my happiness. Okay, so now enter the 1-bagger. At this point, the soundtrack changes, doesn't it? So in my mind, I hear da-da, da-da, da-da. Or, if you're a little more modern, you would hear dun, 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 dun. You know, you got the Death Star. You know, you get just the mood changes, the music, the background, and it's not happy anymore. The guy who buried the money gets there, maybe it took him a while to find it, you know, maybe lost it. You know, he said, I thought it was like 3 feet from that bush or whatever. He doesn't start with, you entrusted me, right? Somehow he lost sight of the fact that his bag of money was entrusted to him to do something with. Instead, right out of the gate, he starts pointing his finger at the master. Even before he talks about what he did or didn't do with the money, he points his finger at the master and says, hey, before I tell you what I did or didn't do, I need to let you know something. This is your fault, master. I knew you were a hard man, harvesting where you had not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. I knew you to be kind of a winner-take-all. Now, in today's language, he probably would have said, I knew you were just some type of type A financial wizard. I knew you were a hard driver, so I was afraid. So before you get mad at me, you need to understand that what I did or didn't do was because of you. Was because I was afraid. You scared me. And he's saying, listen, anybody in my situation, which isn't true, would have done exactly what I did because of the way you are. So I went out and I hid your gold in the ground. So here it is. Here's what belongs to you. Not here's what you entrusted to me. Here's what belongs to you. I'm giving it back to you exactly as you gave it to me. And his master replied, now here's what you got to remember. It's a parable, okay? You wicked and lazy servant, better translated, worthless. You worthless, lazy servant. Now, again, Gina mentioned, he's not mad at the servant because of something he didn't. He did. He didn't do anything bad. Wasn't mad because he did something illegal, immoral. He just didn't do anything. So I knew you to harvest where I've not sown. So you knew that I harvested where I have not sown, and I gathered where I have not scattered seed. You knew me to be a hard driver. You knew me to be the kind of guy who left nothing on the table. At the very least, you should have gone out and put the money in the bank so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. And everybody, again, listening in the audience says, yeah, Jesus, that's what I would have done, you know. Yeah, at least he could have not been lazy, you know. He didn't even take it to the bank. He dug a hole. He didn't see this as something entrusted to him with something to do. He missed the whole point. Jesus says, so take that bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10. Now, some of us might even be critical, say, well, now that's not fair either, Jesus. I mean, why give it to the guy who's got 10? You could give it to the guy who had 5. Then he'd had, the guy who had 4, then he could have had 5. Or maybe just split it, you know, so the guy with 10 would have had 10 and a half, and the guy with 4 would have had 4 and a half. But Jesus said, just remember, I'm just making the story up, okay? It's just a story. But he continues then, throw the worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. To which I want to say, no, not that, Jesus. You threw him to hell? Jesus is saying, well, Well, obviously, if you don't manage your money well, you go to hell, right? So, Arnie, come on up, give us a stewardship moment. We're going to close in prayer and call it a day. No, no, he doesn't. It's a guy with money. He can't send him to hell, okay? So, what's that mean? You know, Jesus is conveying that you can't be in my circle anymore. Okay, I've got my peeps. Okay, and you're not going to be a part of that anymore. You're going to be banished from my inner circle. The weeping and gnashing of teeth, it's frustration. Have you ever said, "Man, I can't believe I missed that. I should have sold earlier, should have bought earlier, should have called her, shouldn't have called him." You know, it's like, oh man, you know. I saw an article this week, and that's why I had to look it up again. You know, I wish I'd bought Netflix a year ago. You know, $1,000, you know, last year in Netflix would have netted you almost, you know, I think it was another $500 or something. Or 22 years ago, if you'd have given Netflix just $1,000 22 years ago, oh, perish the thought. Your $1,000 today would be $1,200,000. So we can all weep and gnash our teeth that we didn't. So now we get weeping and gnashing of teeth. Oh man, just $1,000, $1,200,000. I should have called him. I should have done this. I should have done that. It's weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's frustration. I missed an opportunity. What's Jesus do? Well, moves on to the next parable. But all of these parables together in Matthew 25 help us understand what's going on. And that's what? It's what you've been entrusted with is less important than what you do with what you've been entrusted. What do you do with what you have? The issue is not what you have or what you started off with. The issue is, what are you going to do with what you have? And Jesus says the kingdom of God operates this way. So I heard it put this way once, and humor me. I kind of imagine like that we all have bookshelves in our life, and I thought, well, maybe we could do tool sets. So if a tool set works for you, But we all have a bunch of stuff. We all have a limited amount of time, right? We may not like to admit that, but sometimes when we look over and go, man, I can't believe George, Sarah, whoever, Yeah, we all have a limited amount of time. So what's on our bookshelf or what's in our tool set? We have a network of friends. We have connections. We have influence. You've got a family. You've had some level of education. You've got dreams. You've got a job. You've got a career. You've got money. You've got talent. You've got your health, to whatever degree we have our health. We put all those things together, and you are a beautiful you. You are a unique you. There is no one like you. You have your own story, and your story is unique. There's no one like you. There's nobody's bookshelf. There's nobody's tool set who's exactly like you. That's what you've been entrusted with. Now, you may wish you had more talents. You may wish you had more money. You may wish your health was better. Doesn't matter, in a sense. This is who you are. And here's what Jesus is saying. What's on this shelf is not nearly as important as what you do with what's on the shelf. Now we love, don't we? We love those rags to riches story. Oh man, she didn't start off with anything. She was born on the wrong side of the tracks. He came from a bad family, and look what he's made of himself. I mean, we love those stories, don't we? Oh man, his health was terrible. Stephen Hawking, I mean, just think of his life. I mean, with the physical debilitation, that he had. How easy it is for someone in that situation just to kind of, throw up their hands and go, gee, what can I ever amount to? But yet, those people often go on to do terrific things. to accomplish something great. But so many, they just, oh, well, if I had more money, or if I had more this, or if I had more of that, if I had a better family, if I had a better story, if I had a better bookshelf. But successful people know it's irrelevant what others have. It's what you do with what you have. Red and yellow, black and white, it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God. When Jesus taught this parable, it was understood that everything on our shelf has come from God, the good and the not so good. And what's on your shelf is your opportunity to do something with what you have been entrusted with, what you've been given. It's not what you have that's most consequential. It's what are you going to do with what you have that matters. And this story, Jesus lets us know that in some way in the twilight of our life, we will have a reckoning. We will have an accounting of how we managed our lives. Here's what I did with what I had. Here's what I did with what you entrusted me with. We're so tempted. This is that comparison piece, right? We're so tempted to look at what's on other people's bookshelves, what other people have for tool sets. But the only question that ultimately matters is, what did I do with what was entrusted to me? See, I want to live my life the way God called me to live my life. I want to manage my time. I want to manage my resources. I want to manage all that's in my sphere of influence with what God has put into my hands in such a way that at the end of my life, at the end of your life, at the end of our lives, we too will hear, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant. You did well with what's been entrusted to you. Come and enter my joy." Lord, some of us, I just don't think that we think of ourselves as gifted. We don't think of ourselves as resourceful. We don't really think about it this way, but sometimes we just think, I don't have anything on my bookshelf. I don't amount to much. My opinions don't amount to much, this or that or whatever. But we fail to see, oh Lord, what has been entrusted to us, the wonderful bookshelf, all the tools set, the unique me, the unique who I am, what gifts and graces I have been given. So perhaps for some today, Lord, we just need to turn over and look around behind us and say, wow, Lord, that's a beautiful bookshelf you've given to me. Beautiful bookshelf that you've entrusted me with. I want to do the very best that I can with it because I want to live to benefit others. I want to live to benefit this world, and ultimately, as has been mentioned, that one day we too will hear. Because of what you have done with what has been entrusted to you, we shall hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into my happiness. Enter into my joy." Amen.